Woohoo!
At this point in human history, do you think we spend more time with people who share our beliefs or less than at previous points in history?
I think that we share more time with people that share our beliefs, because although people still fundamentally disagree on a lot of things, I think it's easier to control the company that you keep, because previously in human history, there's a lot of focus on family and friends, and like you had to sort of keep it, and there's like certain places where you had to like keep it in like your social circles, and you couldn't really go out there. And there also wasn't as much widespread communication, like we had like the internet. Now in the current modern age, when we have access to things like the internet and planes, we're able to find a lot of people that agree with us on things, and we're able to go to places where we'll feel like people agree with us more. And then we also don't feel quite as much pressure to keep people around that disagree with our beliefs, that we feel uncomfortable being around, because the current modern age just focuses a lot on independence and not being focused on anyone else, and like everyone has to be able to rely on themselves. Like they have to like you get the job, and that's the money that you live off of, and then like there's not a lot of focus on helping each other out in community. And while that has a lot of very obvious negative things that can happen to everyone, it also can be useful for finding independence away from the people that you've always been around and that you now find yourself to disagree with. And you're able to just entirely form your social circle based on your own beliefs and the people that you want to be around you, instead of the people that you feel like you have to be around you, because there's no real requirements anymore, even if there are still obviously parts where you have to be around people like classmates or coworkers. There's an end to that, and then for the most part, people have pretty much like a large amount of freedom around who they interact with.
So I guess what you're saying is, in this modern age, we can choose the company that we keep.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it was largely chosen for us.
Yeah.
Do you think that because of that, we have more intimacy in our lives than people used to? Or do you think we have the same or less?
Well, I think a lot of people would argue that we have less intimacy in our lives now, based on things like the internet, where people were saying that we constantly spend time on devices, and then like we're trying to like form online friendships, but that doesn't allow a true amount of intimacy. But I also think, like, I think I would choose to disagree, because I think that we actually have a lot more intimacy in our lives now, like this sort of true, real kind of intimacy. People are able now to love and be intimate with people in the way they choose a lot more than they were. And there are so many problems in the world right now, but like at least in like America, there are significantly less like arranged marriages, and now we have marriage rights for both gay and straight couples. And so now there is just generally more freedom for intimacy, but also considering the online argument, I think that is just a tool that can be used to distract as well as it can be used to connect. And we have always had distractions of our lives, even if this is a more obvious distraction than most. So having a device with you doesn't necessarily distract you from intimacy that you really want to have. And if you really want to have a relationship with someone, which I think most people do, you will manage to not to get distracted too much by your phones, and even have that be like sort of a connector for you two. And then in terms of online friendships and dating, a lot of people would argue that it's sort of not a true form of intimacy, and it's distracting people away from the real relationships they need to keep in their lives. But not only are you able to have a certain amount of intimacy with people just through screens, I think people also find that for the true lasting friendships and romantic relationships that want to keep and that will realistically keep, those are the ones that eventually lead into meeting each other in real life. Because even as like the online sphere dominates people's relationships and the ways of interaction with each other, when people really feel like they want a lasting relationship with a person, the next logical step is always to meet each other in real life and to expand your relationship off of the screens. And so I would argue that screens not only foster new relationships that might not have been built without them, and they form intimacy between people that may never have gone to interact before, they also manage to connect people that were already connected but are forced apart for reasons. Like if you're moving away, if you're not able to really meet up as much, if you're busy with your lives even, then you can text or call or have a FaceTime with people that you already know, that you're already intimate with, and it's just another way to have intimacy and to continue to build and keep those relationships.
Well, one aspect of the modern world that you discussed in a positive light is that we have choices.
Yes.
On the other hand, though, of course, because we have so many choices, like you said, we can just cut off relationships without fear of that great of a penalty for that, right? Because there's always more fish in the sea.
Yeah.
Is that a good or a bad thing? How does that affect, the intimacy of relationships for people?
It could be a negative in some ways, in that they might be less thoughtful over the impact of cutting off like a large relationship in their life, whether that be familial or platonic or romantic or otherwise. But I also always hesitate to think that choice is a bad thing. And I think that that's generally a good thing, and that'll allow you to have more relationships with those of your choosing and not less. And I also think that in terms of intimacy, in terms of real intimacy that involves trust and care and love and exposing yourselves over to someone and really, truly connecting with them, that sort of intimacy does not come by feeling locked in a relationship. That sort of intimacy does not come by sort of feeling like there's no way to get out, or that if you got out, then you would never get another person anyway, so you might as well just stick what you have and settle, right? When you are considering getting out of a relationship with someone, no matter the type, if that relationship is truly intimate and you truly love each other and you don't want to let go of each other, that relationship is not going to be impacted by choice. What choice does, instead of making real intimacy harder to get or making people not consider relationships they already have as valuable, what choice does is allow people to eliminate the false intimacy in their lives, allow people to eliminate toxic relationships or unfulfilling relationships or relationships that just don't work out for whatever reason, and allows people to try to look for true intimacy. And even if that does end with more relationships ending, and even though some of those might be mistakes, I think that the majority of them would have ended anyway, whether that be by death or any other reason. They would have ended feeling not truly real and sort of unfulfilled and not very intimate, because instead of actively making the choice every single day to stay with a person that you care about because you want to be intimate with them and you love them, it is instead feeling like that choice is not yours, and it's never yours, and you don't have the choice to make, and so leads itself to a lot more untrusting, unloving, uncaring relationships.
Do you think that your perspective or a person's perspective on choice is dependent on how desirable that person is to others?
What do you mean?
Well, in other words, I guess if you're a highly desirable person, right, choice is great. Because you can pick and choose between the people you like and feel most connected to and whatever else, right? But what if you're one of those people, and I think this particularly applies to a romantic situation, who, sort of who has physical, emotional, personality traits that just turn other people off. Do you think their perspective on choice is different than the person who just sees it as a bountiful set of options for them to choose between?
A lot of people's opinions on choice are dependent on how likely they feel that others will choose them, because relationships are a two-way street after all. And so by giving yourself the choice, you're also giving others the choice not only to choose you, but choose someone else instead of you. So yeah, I think that your own perspective on desirability could have an impact on what you view choices. But I really think this is a really difficult question to answer, because it's very dependent on, because it doesn't really have one true answer. You can't really be like, okay, what's better, like choice or like what's going on. But like, choice is important. And there's a lot of things in our society where people are valued more than other people, and they're terrible, and we need to like eradicate things like the beauty standard is very unfair for everyone, just in general. But I also think that even though it's really terrible how our society functions right now and how people are valued, and how those values are not necessarily the most reflective of that person's being, I think that no one is owed to any sort of relationship, but like platonic, familial, romantic, otherwise, like any sort of relationship at all. And so even if choice means that other people are going to be more likely to find relationships than you, forming a perspective based on the idea that anyone is owed to another relationship by anyone simply for being a person, and that choice should be eradicated for the sake of everyone having a relationship, whether that be happy or consensual or not, I think it's a very dangerous perspective to have. And so I think that I will always value choice.
I think that was well said. You, like everyone, I think, feels the gaze of the other. And that gaze can be uncomfortable. Terrifying, even. What strategies do you have? What strategies could you have to help ameliorate that sense of dread you feel when the other's gaze first comes upon you?
I think that I'm a pretty bad person to ask for this, because I'm like, I like have the most anxiety in the world. I'm like the master of social anxiety. Like I will have like a full-on breakdown if I interact with a stranger. So I'm not sure if I have like the best coping mechanisms for dealing with social anxiety and the gaze of the other. But well, you could try to consider like generally anxiety, trying to consider like the best versus worst case scenarios. And you could try to think like, okay, like what's the worst case scenario? Like this person doesn't like me, okay, then I lose a relationship, okay, but like probably not the end of the world. Of course, this doesn't always work, especially if the relationship is going to be impactful no matter what. Like if you're trying to apply for a job interview or something, you're like, okay, if this person doesn't like me, then I don't get the job. But I guess another piece of advice that I'm not the greatest at applying to myself, but that has been sort of helpful in some cases, is just try to like fake it until you make it.
Right.
Like just sort of pretend like you are confident. Pretend like think in your head like, okay, I belong here. There's no reason I shouldn't be here. Like I am a good person that like can like form relationships with other people.
Right, and you said you kind of described it as fake it until you make it, but I don't really feel like that's a fake perspective. Right, I think that's reminding yourself of some realities about the situation.
I was just sort of saying fake it until you make it, and like pretend to be confident until you feel confident.
Right. So I will say that for me, I feel like when I was younger, I was deeply insecure. And throughout my life, I've become less insecure. And I'm trying to analyze, what changed for me. And obviously there are some things, in terms of like just myself and, being more accomplished or whatever else that maybe have changed that to some degree. But there's definitely the change began before any sort of external validation. I don't feel like it came from external validation necessarily. The biggest change was realizing that we're all the same. That when I was concerned about the gaze of the other, it was because it made me feel like I was being judged.
Yeah.
And so all of my attention went onto myself. But once I realized that everyone in the room was doing the exact same thing, we were all sitting there getting freaked out by the gaze of the other, and all of our focus was on ourselves, and that no one actually was paying attention to each other. That all of a sudden I realized that anxiety, that the cause for that fear was an illusion. It literally wasn't real. It was something that I was making up in my own head. What you can do then, if you can realize that you're the only one who's thinking about you, and that everyone else is thinking about themselves, you can pull off a little trick. And it seems rather simple, but you can stop thinking about yourself and actually start thinking about what those other people are thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like, get into their head a little bit.
Yeah.
And turn your focus from yourself to them. What are their insecurities? What are they worried about? What do they care about? What are they happy about? What would make them feel more comfortable? I think one way to describe it is transferring your mindset from being the guest to being the host. And once you make that change, like, it's pretty easy, right? Because it's not scary to be thinking about what other people are thinking, what they're concerned about, or trying to, help them be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that doesn't feel weird, that doesn't feel terrifying or anything else. And by definition, your attention is no longer on yourself, which is, I think, really what hurts. So I don't know if that's an employable strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's something that just you gotta, it's got to happen over time or whatever else. But it seems like something that could be actively fostered. And I think that it's interesting that it ties into so much of what we've been talking about in terms of philosophy. Once again, getting outside of yourself and taking a more universal perspective or an other perspective. And I think we've learned that that's important for epistemology, right? And letting your beliefs go and gaining new beliefs. I think we talked about it a lot in terms of ethics. A lot of the moral failings, the things that frustrate us about other people, is because they're focused on themselves and they can't get out of their own head and they don't think about other people. And here we are discussing, one of the great challenges of being a human being, and that is just interacting with other people. And all of a sudden, the answer is the same, mm-hmm. right? If you can step outside of that self-centered perspective and realize that it's a multi-perspective that this universe is about. Billions of perspectives on this planet. Each of them different. Radically different. Like, their whole histories different. Not a single one even remotely the same. And then, I think it makes that connecting with people much easier and much less scary.
Yeah. We hope that you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please consider checking out the next one in the series.
Or some of our other series on philosophy and life.
We upload videos every Friday, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. See you next week.